I'm sitting here thinking about what I'm going to say. I was sat for a while, and then it dawned on me, of course, that there's no point thinking about what I'm going to say. So, if thought could do it, it would have done it a long time ago. Today, 26th of June 2020, it's the physical birthday of the 17th Karmapa, close to the Dalai Lama in the Tibetan tradition of Buddhism. Tomorrow, 27th of June 2020, it's my birthday. So whatever there is around astrology and sun signs, I feel close to that man in his almost impossible position of rendering a meaningful message to a sophisticated 21st century audience, whilst being in a chain of transmission that goes back hundreds and hundreds of years, to a man who established the term enlightenment. Being in the now, connecting into time, is almost impossible. There was a man who is purportedly an avatar. I say is because the isness is linked to this eternity of presence. But he's not here anymore physically. Meher Baba. Eventually in his life he communicated only with the spelling board, spelling out the letters of each word and not speaking. Almost as if to say that it is almost impossible to engage with the flow of words and the soporific blah 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 which people hear, they engage with and imagine that they understand what on earth is being done or said. It's also said that a person who is truly in union with the eternal presence of consciousness can actually, in that conveyance of energy, from energy to the energy in the multiplicity, can talk about anything, and that a glance from that person can bring about a cathartic change, because it is the energy in the words that's important. So I sit here thinking, what am I going to say? We could actually talk about anything at all. Sport, your favourite hobby, anything in this society. And the energy would come through in the letters of my words in the same way if a person is ripe and ready to hear and to connect with the energy. Now, usually, of course, when people are teaching, or if they're in the place of the Karmapa, or in the place of the head of a religion, or in the place of a New Age teacher, then the words are generally framed, paragraphed, sentenced in a way that people expect them to be. People go along to pre-lockdown, of course, go along to halls, and they hear illumined people talking about how to navigate through these times, to become whole, to do whatever it is they're saying to do in order to be present, in order to reduce anxiety, to look at eternal things, to ponder and wonder about the soul, to look at a personal journey from the many to the one. And so the words are as they are. Many in those audience would not go and listen to somebody talking about football or cooking or the intricacies of the central banking system, because that wouldn't fit into their preconception of what a holy person should be talking about. Of course, there are some words which lend themselves to the conveyance of energy in a certain way, but ultimately the one connects to itself in whichever way it requires. But I did not intend to sit here today and make this little video. I actually came into this outdoor space to talk to a person who wants to change their behaviour, and I offer a service in my counselling practice, and the beginnings of change are always very scary. So I made the call, and the person isn't quite ready yet to engage, and who can blame? You know, there is no blame. Behaviour change is a very scary thing, especially if there are the props of substance use, of behaviours around instincts which have become very powerful in a personality. Because you see, the instincts don't speak the mother tongue. I sit here now in this beautiful space, and I'm sitting in a body that speaks English to all intents and purposes. If I just sat here and hadn't opened my mouth to anyone who didn't know me, before I opened my mouth, that person would not know what was going to come out of this particular mouth, what language. So this body is universal. Now, this is common sense. Everybody knows this. And yet somehow we all imagine that our particular body, in our particular language, are married and united by themselves from 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Give me a man, give me a child until they're 7, and I'll show you the man, as the Jesuits say. Well, imposed discipline can bring about a certain self-discipline. Of that there is no doubt. And the programmability of mankind is a foregone experiential fact. But these bodies that we all live in, male and female, are thousands and thousands and thousands of years old. And the instincts, the wiring, the conduits of energy that interact through our 5 senses into this body do not speak any particular intellectual, cultural language. And therein lies our problem for behaviour change, if change needs to be brought about. Because we live in energy. quantum physicists say that everything is vibrating at the atomic level, and that atoms anyway are 99.9% empty space. So we live in a mystery. We live in two places at once all of the time. Physically, now the quantum physicists tell us, and actually we live in a visible world and an invisible world, both at the same time. We live in the invisibility of the wave, so far as light is concerned, and the visibility of the particle, so far as light is concerned. And this renders itself into all of our experiences, whether we're aware of it or not. So the sperm and the germ. The sperm wiggles like a wave, and the germ of the egg appears to be the particles. So there is this coming together at the physical level, the mental level, and the spiritual level. At the spiritual level, it's light upon light. The mental level, opposites that come together in the animus and the anima in our psyche, across the two hemispheres of our brain. And physically, we live in a world of opposites coming together, yin and yang, them and us, teams meeting on the marked out playing fields of life. All very well until it breaks down and then doesn't work, or if the sleepwalk of custom and habit break down. How then to look after the fabric of the world, the fabric of cultures, the fabric of our very selves as individuals, when it becomes clear that when I hold up my finger and I say to my finger, move, it moves without hesitation, as if it really understands the English language. Move. And yet, when I say to my behaviours, change or stop, if they're in a place of danger or disarray, my instincts, my security instinct, my social instinct and my sex instinct, these three instincts braid together at a deep and ancient level from which my behaviours arise. These instincts, if I say to them change, they look at me like a little puppy. And if I say stop, they get frightened and they do even more of the very thing I'm wanting them to change from. It's all very well sitting here and smiling or even having a chortle at this situation. We can laugh at ourselves if it's simply telling ourselves to not eat the next chocolate bar. If you're about to collapse your whole life with the next line of cocaine, or the next bottle of vodka, or the next spin of the dice in the gambling house, then the laughter stops. If businesses are chasing themselves into bankruptcy and they can't stop themselves from doing deals which can never ever have a chance of working because they don't want to lose face in the short term, then scores and scores of families' existence is put into jeopardy and collapse. If whole nations start running themselves into situations of jeopardy because the leaders become disconnected from the truth and hypocrisy takes over the system which is meant to govern and keep safe the lines and boundaries on the pitch of play of life, if the goalposts are moved all over the place by leaders who have lost the ability to hold principle Again, it's no laughing matter. And then how to change when the individual and the collective instinctive patterns of security instincts, social instincts and sex instincts start to short circuit and arc and spark. Language. How to find the language and the words to reach into a situation, to carry energy, to calm the storm, to establish a breathing space within which some sense can arrive. There is work to do. This isn't a matter of simply waving a magic wand. That would make the Almighty God into some kind of macabre entity that could have eased pain 100 years ago, or 300 years ago. One of the common elements of the intellect, as it bamboozles itself into its clever disassembly of God, is, well, if there was a God, there wouldn't be all this or that, and then it cites a list of atrocity that proves to that particular person why God can't exist. This is from an intellect that finds it hard to make its breakfast a lot of the days. Never mind judging and accusing the existence or not of a God that produces everything from itself ex nihilo. So the intellect is very good at disassembling, of taking the brown wire out of the plug of life and then insisting that it puts its own brown wire into the plug of life to try and get some energy out of a situation. But it won't do in terms of real understanding of what's going on in this life that we all find ourselves in. Language, presence, bearing. It used to be said of a person, he's a man of some bearing. It's a nice sound, bearing. It means, of course, to be able to bear a heavy weight, to be able to get one's bearings in terms of direction. But the sound of it also means to be bare. What you see is what you get. As appropriately as possible to be here, defects and all, so that people can feel some identification with presence. For the time I've got left on this planet, my job is to help leaders to lead, to help individuals to understand for themselves the life that they find themselves in, and to help collectives submit to the necessary rigour and discipline of a leadership that is necessary to move out of an ill situation into a well situation. These are not easy situations that we find ourselves in, individually, collectively. I don't know if this is going to work. It's all I have. My intelligence, whatever intelligence is of an order of measurability that puts it into the same bracket as Einstein. So what? this energy can either take itself into the physical, the mental, or the spiritual. My intelligence has been relentlessly drafted into the spiritual wrestling ring in order to try to shed some light into the mental realm and the physical realm, not only of myself, but also into this world that we all share. So I'm doing my best here. We just need some conversation, some questions, some answers. Let's see what arises. Let's see how we can move this along. So, I'm going to stop this here and post it. And I'm going to wait for the invitations to pour in, to have question and answer sessions, to meet people, to explore, to clarify, to see what comes through in this process of coming together, of understanding how the spiritual manages the material everywhere, whatever the appearance is. See you soon.